Hello, fourth grade, and welcome to Unit 4, Week 2. We're going to begin with our vocabulary words. Our first word is the word intend. When you intend to do something, that means you're planning to do it or you mean to do that thing. So you can say, I intend to go to the park after I finish my homework. That means that's what you're planning to do. Or I intend to help with a beach cleanup with my community members. Intend just means something that you're planning on doing. That's where the word intention comes from. Next, we have the word tolerates. When you tolerate something, it basically means you're putting up with it. You don't like it very much, but you're dealing with it. So when someone tolerates something, that means they're dealing with it or they're putting up with it, but they're not happy about it. So when someone says, I can no longer tolerate this behavior, that means I can't handle it anymore. I can't deal with it anymore. It needs to stop. Next, we have the word accompanies. So when you accompany someone, you're going with them. So my sister accompanies me to the park. My friend accompanies me to the beach. Accompanies means you're in company with each other. That means you're together. Next, we have the word weary. Now, when someone is feeling weary, they're very tired. They're exhausted. So when a lot of times we'll talk about weary travelers, right? Someone who has been traveling for a long time, they're really tired. Next, we have the word overwhelming. When something is overwhelming, it's very strong. It's an overpowering feeling. So you can say, the joy of seeing my grandpa after not seeing him for many years was overwhelming. I was so happy. It was such a huge feeling. Or the public response to a new issue that came up, everybody banded together and they helped fix the problem. That working together, that cooperation was overwhelming, made us very happy. The next word is the word opponent. An opponent is the person you are against. It's the person on the other team. They're a competitor. So you're in competition with that person. So for example, if you're running a race with your friend and you want to see who's going to win, your friend is the opponent in this race, right? They're the person you're running against. We also have opponents in offices of government, right? When people are running for an office or running for president, they have the people who are running against each other, but all those people that want to get the same job, they are opponents, right? They're running against each other. Next, we have the word campaign. Now, a campaign is this organized set of steps that a person has to get to a goal. So a lot of times you'll hear about presidential campaigns. Their campaigns are basically, what are they doing? What are these steps and these plans that they have to help them achieve that goal of becoming president? You know, which cities are they going to go to try and get supporters? What kind of things are they going to do to try and earn the favor of the people? All of those things are part of a campaign. Those are campaign strategies. Those are ways that they do certain things to get that support. And our last word is the word governor. Now, governor is a person who is in charge of the state's government. So we have the president who's in charge of the entire country. Then each state has a leader, and that leader is named the governor. All right, let's go on to our spelling words for this week. Now, our spelling words this week will focus on inflectional endings where we have to change the final Y into an I before adding that ending. So it's usually a base word. Going to be your base word originally had a Y in it, but you had to change it to an I before you added the ending, whether the ending is an ER, an ES, an ED, LY, EST, and so on. You'll see these as we go through. So pay attention to that I that you see, because before it was an I, it was a Y. So funnier, families, pennies, worried, replied, varied, marries, carries, easily, silliest, jumpier, emptier, merrier, applied, cozily, sorriest, prettily, lazier, happiest, dizziest, scaring, tasting, skipped, handily, and factories. Now, all of these words originally had, or except for obviously the review words, originally had a Y as the final letter. And another thing you're going to notice is it was a consonant that would have been before that Y. So when you have a consonant before the Y, you're going to have to change that Y into an I before you add your inflectional ending. So that's one of the key things that we're going to remember. So let me go back here for a moment. So for example, the word jumpier. The original word would have been jumpy. And we can say, this kitten is jumpy, but the kitten over there is jumpier, more jumpy, right? So it would be Jumpy. That P is a consonant, and then the Y comes after it. When you have that consonant letter plus Y, that Y needs to become an I before you add any other ending to it. So ER, EST, ED, those all have to have that Y become an I first before you change it. Next up, we're going to talk about words that have silent letters. Now, we know there are lots of words with silent letters. And if you go into the materials section where you're finding this video, there's an attachment there, a picture with a long list of words that have different silent letters. So I put some of them for you here. There's a lot more, but I just wanted to list a few to give you an idea. So we have when a silent W in the words wrestle, wrist, wrote, wrench, answer, sword. You don't say the W. We don't say wa wrestle or wa wrist or wa wrote or wa wrench or answer or sword. That W is silent. With silent letter G, we have sign, feign, gnome, assignment, campaign, and design. Silent letter G, you don't say it. Silent K, knowledge, knuckle, knives. We're not saying that K at all. We're saying the N or the letter that's coming after it. Now for a silent letter B, we have like in the word lamb, comb, crumbs, plumber, doubtful, debt, subtle, and thumb. All of these, that B is in different places in these words. And you notice that that B is completely silent. We don't say thumb or subtle or depth. We keep that B silent and we say the other letters. Silent C, like in the word seen or sent or acquire, science, muscle, all of those have a silent C. We're saying most of these have an SC, so we're saying the letter S in acquire. We're not saying the C, we're saying the A and then the QU, acquire. Silent H, like in the word ghost, ghastly, herbs, honest, hour. That H is completely silent. We're saying all the other letters instead. Silent L, like in the word could, should, yoke, talk, walk, calf, calm, chalk. We're not saying the letter L in any of those. So there's a long list. I do encourage you to check it out because there are some pretty cool things in there, words that you didn't even notice that you say or read all the time and didn't notice that they have silent letters in them. Another thing we're going to review are open and closed syllables. So these are things we've talked about before. We're going to review them one more time. Now remember, a syllable is a word part that has a vowel sound in it, not a single vowel in it, a single vowel sound. So this can be, like we talked about before, this can be in vowel teams, like an EA or an EE. When it makes one sound, it belongs in a syllable. Now, syllables can be opened or closed. And if a word has more than one syllables, it can have both open and closed, or it could have only open, or it could have only closed. And we're going to look at examples of each. Another thing to remember is that if a word has a double consonant in it, that means two of the same letter back to back, we split the syllable in between those letters. So one of them will be in one syllable, then the other one will be in the next syllable. So like the word mitten or sudden or litter or button or scribbling or chatter. All of these have a double consonant in them. So mitten, M-I-T, is going to be the first syllable, and then T-E-N is the second syllable. So mit-ten, din, lit, ter, but, ten, scribbling, chat, ter. You divide it right in the middle. Now, closed syllables are syllables that have a consonant letter at the end of them. That means anything that's not a vowel. So the word butter has two closed syllables. Sudden has two closed syllables. The word chair has one syllable and it's closed as well. Now for open syllables, those are words that have a vowel at the end of that syllable. The word baby, two open syllables. City, two open syllables. Fly has one syllable and it's an open syllable. Now, like we said, you can have words that have both. So the word pilot has an open syllable in the beginning, the PI. Since it ends with an I, that's an open syllable. And then LOT, L-O-T, for the rest of the word is a closed syllable because that letter T is closed. It's a consonant, makes it a closed syllable. Silent, candy, all of these follow the same rules. They have both open and closed. So silent is open and then closed, and then candy is closed and then open for the second syllable. So feel free to come back to the notes, review these more carefully when you come across them in your work so that you don't make any silly mistakes. Next, let's go on to pronouns. Now, a quick review. A pronoun is a word that takes the place of one or more nouns. There are a lot of different kinds of pronouns. This week, we're going to focus on one in particular, but I want to review the other ones. So we'll take a look at all the ones we've looked at so far. The first one that we're going to review is called indefinite pronouns. Now, indefinite, in means not, right? We remember that prefix. Not definite. That means we're not defining a specific thing. We're not talking about a specific thing or person. So indefinite pronouns can be words like anyone, anything, everything, nobody, somewhere, and on and on and on. You get the gist. And indefinite pronouns can be singular or plural. Next, quick review is relative pronouns. Now, remember, relative is from the word relate. So a relative pronoun is used at the beginning of a dependent clause. And some of those relative pronouns are that, which, who, whom, and whose. And they are relative pronouns because they are relating back to something or someone else in the sentence. And they're used to join two sentences that are about the same person or the same thing. So if I said, the boy who went to the park yesterday forgot his hat. So who is talking about the boy that I mentioned. Now, today's focus is going to be first on personal pronouns, and then we're going to talk about something else called reflexive pronouns. Now, personal pronoun, we talked about these a little bit briefly last week, where we said a personal pronoun refers to a specific person, place, or thing. So some of our relative pronouns are I, you, he, she, it, they, we, us, them, him, or her. Those are all of our relative pronouns. Now, remember, those take the place of a name, the name of a noun that's somewhere else in the sentence, or they're replacing a name in the sentence. So these are broken into subject pronouns that come in the beginning, the subject part of the sentence, or object pronouns that come in the predicate part of the sentence. Remember, the subject is in the beginning of the sentence. The predicate is in the tail end of the sentence. Now, subject pronouns are found in the subject. So the subject pronouns are the ones you usually start a sentence with. I, you, he, she, it, we, or they. Object pronouns, like I said, are part of the predicate of a sentence. They're the ones you say later on in the sentence. Me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. We don't start a sentence by saying, me like cookies. That's why Cookie Monster sounds so funny when you listen to him talk. We say, I like cookies, or would you like to have cookies with me? You, him, her, it, us, and them. So I don't say him goes to the park. I can say he goes to the park, or I will go to the park with him. You see how it's in the tail end of the sentence in the predicate. Now, Obviously, some of these are singular. They're talking about one noun, and some of them are plural. They're talking about more than one. So we, us, them, they, those are plurals. Now I broke it up into a nice little table for you right here to show you which ones are singular and which ones are plural, which ones are subjects, which ones are objects, and example sentence for each. So pay attention to the color coding because the next table we have follows the same color coding pattern. Now for subject pronoun I, remember it comes in the beginning of the sentence. I am going to the park. For you, when it's a subject pronoun, because you notice you is in both places, it takes the same form, even if it's in different places of the sentence. I can say, you can carry the toys. He is making cookies. She wrote a book. It is going to rain today. We will play outside. You can all go together. So you is also plural. You falls into the singular and to the plural. When we're talking to a group, like if I'm talking to the class, if I say, for example, 4th grade, you're going outside to the playground. This you is referring to a group, a plural, right? Because I'm telling you that I'm talking to 4th grade as a whole. Or if I say you all or you guys, you know that I'm talking to a group, not one person. Or I can say they will ride their bikes. So all of these subject pronouns show up in the subject part of the sentence. They show up in the beginning of the sentence. They are what the sentence is about. Object pronouns, again, come in the predicate part of the sentence, in the tail end. If I say, come to the park with me, take the toys with you, the cookies are with him, the book is with her, the grass is muddy, don't step on it. So over here, you can see that it can be a subject or an object pronoun, depending on where it's placed in the sentence and if it's referring back to another noun. So when I say the grass is muddy, don't step on it, it is an object pronoun because I'm talking about the muddy grass. That's what I'm referring back to. Come play with us. Students, the bus is waiting for you. So you see how I said students, that's a plural. So when I say the bus is waiting for you, you know I'm talking to a group. That's how it's also a plural here. Do you want to ride with them? So all of these, you can see the example sentences. Take a minute to pause the video if you like, review them carefully, and then we're going to move on to what we call reflexive pronouns. Now, before I get to the table, a reflexive pronoun is a type of object pronoun. So they're similar to these that we just talked about, object pronouns. They rename the subject, and all reflexive pronouns have self or selves at the end of it. So I'm talking about myself. So think about a reflex. A reflex reflects back or it mirrors back to the thing you're talking about or to the person you're talking about. We use a reflexive pronoun when we want to refer back to the subject of the sentence. So self for singular things and selves. So I made myself breakfast. So I and myself are both referring to the same person. It's me. I did that for myself. I don't want you to hurt yourself. So be careful when you ride your bike. So you and yourself, those are both talking about you. So reflexive pronoun, think about like a reflex, right? If you've ever been to the doctor and they tap your knee and you see your knee kind of come up and come back, right? That reflex, it's coming back to you. So think about how it's going back to the same place. A reflexive pronoun is referring back to the same person or the same thing. So now, following that same color pattern with our singulars and plurals, our subject and object pronouns, now I tagged on the reflexive pronouns at the end. So me becomes myself, you becomes yourself, him becomes himself, her becomes herself, it becomes itself, us becomes ourselves, because we don't say us selves, because that just sounds funny. You becomes yourselves when we're talking about a group, and them becomes themselves. And I'm going to give you several example sentences. It's going to come together for you really nicely. They are pretty easy to follow with. If you are struggling with it, let me know. There are also several supplemental videos, extra videos included with this video in Google Classroom that you can look at that will help you understand reflexive pronouns. And remember, since we said they are a type of object pronoun, that's why you see these overlap in wording. Now, some sentences with reflexive pronouns, I can say, I saw myself in the mirror. I and myself. Myself is reflexive, right? Because it's talking about me. Why do you blame yourself? John sent himself. Mary sent herself a copy. My dog hurt itself. So this one is actually not just my, silly me. It's my dog hurt itself. We blame ourselves. Can you help yourselves? And since we see this written as selves, we know that we're talking about a group. So if I'm saying fourth grade, can you help yourselves to a cookie from, the basket? They cannot look after themselves. So they and themselves is the same person. You and yourselves is the same group. We and ourselves is the same group. My dog and itself is the same dog. It's the same thing. So that takes us to the end of our notes. We're going to get into our stories shortly. But I do want you to take a minute and look over these carefully. I know it's some new information. It is building on what we learned before, so don't stress over it too much. And a lot of these words are very familiar. We're just adding a name to them. These are all words that you use when you talk and read and write all the time. So now we're just giving them a name so we know what to call them. Now, our story for this week is called Larue for Mayor. And I will give you a hint. Larue is this dog right here. This is a fantasy story, obviously, because dogs don't run for mayor and they don't talk. But it's a really fun story. I hope you enjoy it.
Genre: Fantasy. Larue for Mayor. Letters from the Campaign Trail. By Mark Teague. Essential question: why do people run for public office? Read why Larue thinks he should run for mayor. The Snort City Register-Gazette, September 30th. Bugwort launches campaign for mayor. Former Pumpkinville Police Chief Hugo Bugwort announced yesterday that he will run for mayor of Snort City. Calling himself the law and order candidate, Bugwort, who spoke to a cheering crowd in Gruber Park, is widely considered a shoo-in for the job. Snort City is a disgrace, he said, to polite applause. We need to be more like Pumpkinville. That means no more sloppiness, no more silliness, and no more foolish behavior. The speech was interrupted when several dogs in the back of the crowd overturned a hot dog cart. Injured in the fracas was Gertrude Larue of 2nd Avenue. The dogs were not identified. Caption: Dogs Disrupt Rally. October 1st. Dear Mrs. Larue, how sorry I am to hear about your injuries. Who knew that hot dog carts were so unstable? I was simply trying to get a better view of Chief Bugwort when it collapsed. Heaven knows what those other dogs were doing. I must admit that they created an unfortunate impression of delinquency. Anyway, I'm shocked to hear that you'll be confined to the hospital for so long. No doubt you are worried about me. So am I. But Mrs. Hibbins has promised to serve my meals, and somehow I will persevere. With deepest sympathy, Ike. October 2nd. Dear Mrs. Larue, thank you for your concern. Yes, this will be a difficult time for me, stuck here all alone while you recuperate in your pleasant hospital bed. But please, do not worry. I have become friendly with some of the dogs I met the other day in the park. we have decided to form a social club, which will perform various services to the community. Spending time with Fifi, Buck, and Chewy should help ease the pain of your absence. Plus, think of all the good deeds we will be doing. Virtuously yours, Ike. Stop and check. Make predictions. Ike says his social club will serve the community. Do you predict the club will really do good deeds? The Snort City Register-Gazette, October 6th. Wild dogs rampage. Game disrupted. Unruly dogs plagued Snort City again yesterday, as one of the animals broke up a double play and ran away with the baseball during a Snort City Rabbits game at Morley Field. The episode capped a week of problems that began on Tuesday, when a pack of the rambunctious creatures broke up the annual fishing derby on Blatt Lake. Apparently, the dogs first rolled in, then ate the catch. The following day, a group of dogs snuck into a Mr. Ding-a-ling truck outside Gruber Park and made off with 2 gallons of Rocky Road ice cream. None of the dogs have been apprehended, though ice cream vendor Eugene Phelps describes the leader as a scruffy black and white fellow. October 7th. Dear Mrs. Larue, please do not worry about me. I will not starve or die of loneliness, probably. Yes, I read the newspaper accounts regarding dog problems. Frankly, I find them ridiculous. Can this cheerful and spirited behavior really be a problem? Where is the harm? And yet with such lurid reporting, such weak-minded individuals might come to believe that dogs represent a menace to our community. Hope you are feeling better. Ike. Stop and check. Confirm predictions. How are Ike's letters to Mrs. Larue different from what the newspapers report? Confirm your prediction about whether Ike's social club would do good deeds for the community. The Snort City Register-Gazette, October 8th. Bugwort calls for Canine Crackdown. Calling dogs a menace to our community. Mayoral candidate Hugo Bugwort yesterday announced his plans to crack down on the beasts. We can no longer tolerate this sort of behavior, he said, citing recent dog-related problems. Mr. Bugwort proposes not only a leash law and a curfew, but a complete ban on the animals in most public places. This town is literally going to the dogs, said Bugwort. I intend to stop it. In related news, a dog reportedly snuck into Brandmeier's butcher shop on 2nd Avenue and made off with a string of beef sausages. October 9th. Dear Mrs. Larue, I must say I have become alarmed by the ravings of this man Bugwort. Imagine if he actually were elected to our city's highest office. The idea is unthinkable. I must figure out some way to stop this impending disaster. Your worried dog, Ike. The Snort City Register-Gazette, October 10th. Letters to the Editor. As a long-time resident, I must decry the wave of anti-dog hysteria sweeping over our city. Can we so quickly forget the loyalty of man's best friend, who accompanies our firefighters and police on their perilous rounds? Who rescues the weary traveler stuck high in the Alps? Who serves the blind? And the deaf, too, most likely. Dogs, that's who. Signed, a concerned citizen. October 11th. Dear Mrs. Larue, how I envy you the safety of your hospital bed. Here in the outside world, things have become perilous indeed, at least for dogs. The awful Bugwort continues his scurrilous attacks. Yesterday he referred to dogs as gangs of hooligans. He must be stopped. Therefore, I have decided to throw my hat into the ring. This afternoon I will announce my candidacy. Doubtless the public response will be overwhelming. Your next mayor, Ike. October 12th. Dear Mrs. Larue, my first day on the campaign trail was fabulous. Everywhere huge crowds turned out to cheer my message of dog friendliness. My chums from the social club have agreed to help. Of course, we will do our best to keep this campaign positive, though I can't speak for my opponent, who appears to be vicious and unstable, if not insane. Honestly yours, Ike. October 13th. Dear Mrs. Larue, in my appearances, I have been pointing out that if dogs are banned from places like Gruber Park, cats will run wild. Not a pleasant thought. The campaign continues to gather steam. I think we have Bugwort on the ropes. Politically yours, Ike. P.S. I hope you don't mind, but I have been using the apartment as campaign headquarters. The Snort City Register-Gazette, October 14th. Bugwort challenged by mystery candidate. A mysterious new candidate has emerged to challenge Hugo Bugwort in his run for mayor. Supporters of Ike Larue describe him as dog-friendly. Opponents point out that he is, in fact, a dog. Either way, the furry Larue has begun to wage a fierce campaign against Bugwort, who promises to virtually ban all dogs from Snort City. Surprisingly, Larue's message has begun to catch on. We didn't anticipate this, admits Bugwort campaign manager Walt Smiley, referring to the dogs. It turns out some folks are really fond of the little devils. I'm not worried, said Bugwort. Tomorrow is my big rally in Gruber Park. I'll deal with these dog lovers then. October 15th. Dear Mrs. Larue, my supporters and I have decided to confront Chief Bugwort at today's rally. We will be out in force, and though we will conduct ourselves in a dignified manner, I am sure that the results will be interesting. Hope you are well, Ike. P.S. Nothing will distract me from this important cause. The Snort City Register-Gazette, October 16th. Larue rescues Bugwort. Dog called hero. Hugo Bugwort was rushed to Memorial Hospital yesterday after collapsing on stage during a rally in Gruber Park. Apparently, he grew dizzy while trying to shout down hecklers. Among his rescuers was his opponent, local dog Ike Larue. When the chief collapsed, we rushed him to the nearest vehicle, a Mr. Ding-a-ling truck, explained campaign manager Walt Smiley. For some reason, the dog was already inside, but give him credit. He really did his best to help. Larue saved me, said Bugwort. All the way to the hospital, he fed me cool, delicious, Rocky Road ice cream. By the time I got here, I was feeling much better. The rescue puts a new twist on an already unusual campaign. I have completely changed my mind about dogs, said Bugwort. In fact, I would be honored if Ike would serve with me as assistant mayor to make sure that the interests of dogs are represented in a Bugwort administration. Larue, who departed in the Mr. Ding-a-ling truck, could not be reached for comment. Stop and check. Summarize. How does Ike rescue Hugo Bugwort? October 16th. Dear Mrs. Larue, It turns out that Chief Bugwort is not such a bad fellow after all. In fact, he's swell. Anyway, politics are not for me. I would rather make friends than engage in this constant bickering. And since all I ever wanted was to make this a great city for everyone, I have decided to wrap up my campaign and accept the chief's offer to serve as assistant mayor. I'm so glad that you are feeling better and will be able to attend my swearing-in ceremony. Your loyal dog, Ike. The Snort City Register-Gazette, November 3rd. Bugwort sworn in. Larue joins former adversary. Promising to have the most dog-friendly administration ever, new Mayor Hugo Bugwort was sworn in yesterday during a ceremony in Gruber Park. At his side was Assistant Mayor Ike Larue, who many credit with his success. "This is a great day for everyone in Snort City," proclaimed Bugwort, to loud cheers from the audience. The speech was interrupted when several dogs in the back of the crowd overturned a hot dog cart. Bugwort promised to look into the matter. "It certainly is worrisome," he said. "Who knew those carts were so unstable?"
All right, that takes us to the end of our first story. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one. Now, this is an expository text. It's not a fantasy story, but we're still dealing with the same thing with running for office. Remember, an expository text gives you facts and information. So this is a different kind of read, but it still relates to the same general subject.
Bringing government home. Understanding state and local government. What do you think of when you picture the United States government? Do you see the White House, or perhaps the President? These images are accurate, yet incomplete. There are also many U.S. leaders at the state and local levels, in the counties, cities, and neighborhoods where we live. National, state, and local governments share the same basic structure. The executive, legislative, and judicial branches make up the three branches of government. Each branch of government has specific duties and powers. These powers differ in national and state governments. The executive branch. The president is the leader of the national executive branch. Similarly, a governor heads up each state executive branch. The governor makes important decisions about the state. Each state has its own structure and set of officials who are below the governor. At the local level, a city mayor might head up the executive branch. One example of a successful mayor is Mick Cornett of Oklahoma City. Everyday mayors such as Cornett oversee city departments, such as police, schools, and transportation. They also work with others to try to improve their city. Mayor Cornett launched a campaign against obesity in Oklahoma City. Cornett added sidewalks, bike paths, and walking trails. He also created a 70-acre park to promote walking and exercise. Thanks to Cornett's efforts, the people of Oklahoma City have lost over 600,000 pounds. Just a few national powers versus state powers. National leaders can print money, declare war, enforce the U.S. Constitution. State leaders can issue licenses, provide for public health and safety, amend state constitutions. Mayor Mick Cornett. The legislative branch. State legislatures also have strong leaders called senators and representatives. These members try to improve their state by passing new laws. Senator Anthony C. Hill worked hard for the state of Florida. He helped to create and pass new laws. As a legislator, Hill worked to pass important civil rights legislation. He also improved African American voter turnout in Florida elections. In addition, Hill helped to increase the state's minimum wage and reduce class sizes in schools. Local legislators can create similar results in their counties, cities, and towns. They may pass laws that relate to parks, public transportation, and police departments, to name a few. The judicial branch. The judicial branch makes sure that all these laws are understood. It also ensures that the other two branches adhere to the U.S. Constitution. At the state level, this branch usually includes a Supreme Court and lower-level courts. Did you know that in addition to the U.S. Constitution, each state has its own constitution and set of laws to follow? The purpose of a state constitution is to outline the structure of the state government. Many state constitutions are longer than the national one. That is because leaders want to make sure their state is protected. For example, Florida's constitution includes laws that intend to protect the land and animals of the Everglades, an area of natural wetlands in the southern part of the state. The earliest state constitutions were created hundreds of years ago. Today, state leaders amend or change state constitutions to address modern concerns from citizens. South Carolina leaders recently amended their state constitution to include hunting and fishing as a constitutional right for citizens. Senator Anthony C. Hill. County, city, and town courts exist at the local level. Judges may be chosen by public officials. They may also be elected. State and local judges represent a wide range of backgrounds. Justice Eva Guzman is a good example. A judge for the Supreme Court of Texas, Guzman was the first Hispanic woman to be elected to a state office in Texas. State Supreme Court justices decide if judges in lower courts have made the right decisions based on the state constitution. In addition, Justice Guzman has headed up legal education programs in Texas. She does this so that others can learn about the law. Checks and balances. The three branches of government help to create balanced national, state, and local governments. Our forefathers created this system to make sure one branch did not become more powerful than the others. Public officials at each level of government are responsible for the laws we vote on and follow. So the next time you think about who makes up our government, keep your local leaders in mind. Justice Eva Guzman.
All right, that takes us to the end of our stories in our literature anthology book. Let's go ahead and jump into our reading and writing workshop, where we're going to read another fantasy story called The Time Specs 3000.
Genre: Fantasy. The Time Specs 3000. Essential question: why do people run for public office? Read how Miguel makes a decision to run for class president. September 15. Dear Grandpa, I just got back from our class field trip to Washington, D.C., and I have a lot to tell you. Going to Washington helped me decide to run for class president. I owe it all to your invention, the Time Specs 3000. In a nutshell, it helped me get some helpful advice about my problem. I intend to tell you everything when I visit Saturday, but for now I've pasted my field notes into this email, so you can understand how well your invention worked. Field Notes, Day 1. I use the Time Specs 3000 at the Washington Monument. Our guide accompanies us everywhere, and while she's talking, I put on the specs. The design needs tweaking because my friend Ken whispered, "Nerdy shades, dude." Immediately I'm seeing the monument in the past. I am watching the ceremony when they laid the cornerstone in 1848, and everybody's wearing large hats and funny old-fashioned clothes. When I take off the Time Specs 3000, I realize my class is heading to lunch, so I run after them. Field Notes, Day 2. We're back on the National Mall, which is nothing like Brookfield's mall with all its stores. This mall is outside and has a long reflecting pool. My teacher is finding it hard to tolerate some of my classmates' immature behavior, which includes running around throwing pebbles in the reflecting pool. I'm getting kind of weary of all the noise, and I'd rather learn about history on my own. So I put on the Time Specs 3000 and check out the Lincoln Memorial. I see how dignified Lincoln's statue looks, and wonder if I could ever help people like he did. This starts me thinking again about whether I should run for class president. Suddenly, right out of the blue, I hear this voice. "Excuse me, young man, you're thinking of running for president?" I look up and realize that Lincoln's statue is talking to me. It's so overwhelming that I stand there speechless for a minute. Finally, I stammer, "President Lincoln?" "Maybe you should first run for mayor of your town," the statue says. "Or perhaps for governor. Once you get the hang of being in public office, you could run for president." "Actually, it's for president of my 4th grade class," I say. The giant statue nods. "That's an excellent start." I figure while I have Lincoln's ear, I should get some advice. I have a problem. I hate writing and giving speeches, and my opponent, Tommy, is great at both things. "What kind of campaign would you run?" Lincoln asks. "I have lots of ideas for our school," I tell him. "For instance, I want our school to use fruits and vegetables from the local farmers market in the cafeteria. I also want to start a book drive for our school library." "There's your speech," he says. "Tell people your ideas with honesty, integrity, and enthusiasm, and you can't possibly go wrong." "Thanks, Mr. President," I say. "I think I can do that." "Grandpa, I can't wait to see you on Saturday because I have to tell you about our visit to the Natural History Museum. Your grandson and future class president, Miguel. P.S. I would advise not wearing the Time Specs 3000 while looking at dinosaur bones.
All right, that takes us to the end of our stories. Let's go ahead and get into our comprehension skill and strategy for the week. Our comprehension strategy here is to make predictions. Now remember, a prediction is your best guess based on the details and the information that you have from the story or from the reading. You make a prediction of what you think is going to happen based on what you already know or what the author has already told you. And then for our comprehension skill, we're going to be talking about point of view. Now, the point of view is the opinion or the perspective of the person who's talking. So, for example, if you remember back to the story of the true story of the Three Little Pigs, right? That one was told from the point of view of the wolf, where the original story was told from the point of view of the Three Little Pigs. So that's just a reference point for you. Let's go ahead and read some more about making predictions.
Make predictions. When you read, you can use details from the story to make predictions about what you think will happen. As you read the Time Specs 3000, Make predictions about the story and confirm or revise them. Find text evidence. What kind of invention did you predict the Times-Specs 3000 was? Go back and reread the beginning of the email on page 253. What details helped you to make your prediction? September 15. Dear Grandpa, I just got back from our class field trip to Washington, D.C., and I have a lot to tell you. Going to Washington helped me decide to run for class president. I owe it all to your invention, the Times-Specs 3000. In a nutshell, it helped me get some helpful advice about my problem. I intend to tell you everything when I visit Saturday, but for now I've pasted my field notes into this email, so you can understand how well your invention worked. As I read page 253 of the Times-Specs 3000, I predicted the invention would be a special kind of glasses because of its name. Point of view. The narrator's point of view is how the narrator thinks or feels about characters or events in the story. A story can have a first-person narrator or a third-person narrator. Find text evidence. When I read page 253 of the Times-Specs 3000, I learn that a boy is writing an email to his grandfather. I see the pronouns I, me, and my. So I know this story has a first-person narrator. I can find details in the story to find the narrator's point of view. Graphic organizer. Details. The narrator was weary of the noise his classmates made and wanted to learn history on his own. The narrator wonders if he could ever help people like Lincoln did. Point of view. The narrator is a fourth grader excited by history. He is unsure if he should run for class president.
All right, next let's talk about the genre that we were talking about earlier. And a lot of our stories that we've been reading, or the stories that we've been reading today, are fantasy stories. Now remember, a fantasy is a kind of fiction story that has things that can't exist in real life. So things like people flying or animals talking, things like that. So let's go ahead and read about fantasies, and then we're going to get into our vocab strategy for this week, which are idioms. And idioms are a lot of fun.
Fantasy. The Times-Specs 3000 is a fantasy. A fantasy is a type of fiction story, has characters, settings, or events that could not exist in real life. Usually includes illustrations. Find text evidence. The Times-Specs 3000 is a fantasy. The character of Miguel is realistic, but when he uses the Times-Specs 3000, he is able to see things that happened in the past. Also, some of the illustrations depict events that could not happen in real life. Illustrations. Illustrations show the events of the story. Here we can see what the world looks like viewed through the Times-Specs 3000.
Okay, now our vocab strategy, like I said, is idioms. Idioms are a kind of figurative speech that are basically a phrase where the meaning of the phrase is different from the individual words. And an easy one that a lot of you guys know is when I say, that's a piece of cake. If I say something is a piece of cake, I'm talking about it being something that's easy or simple to do. I'm not saying that thing is actually a piece of cake. Right? So an idiom is a phrase or an expression where the meaning can't be understood from the words itself or the words themselves in it. You're understanding it as a whole. It's a saying that people have a different meaning for. And one of the really cool things about idioms is they're found in different languages, not just in English. So if you speak a different language, there's a very good chance that there are some sayings or some idioms in that language as well.
Idioms. An idiom is a phrase or expression whose meaning cannot be understood from the separate words in it. If you are not sure of the meaning of an idiom, look at the surrounding phrases and sentences to help you figure it out. Find text evidence. The phrase, "in a nutshell," on page 253, is an idiom. I know it does not mean that something is really inside the shell of a nut. Miguel says that his grandfather's invention helped him reach a decision. I think that "in a nutshell" means to summarize or say briefly. I owe it all to your invention, the Timespecs 3000. In a nutshell, it helped me get some helpful advice about my problem.
All right, that takes us to the end of our notes for this week, fourth grade. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. I do have additional videos and information in Google Classroom under the materials section for this week. I will have a video on idioms as well to help you get more experience with those. Now remember, we said an idiom is a phrase where the phrase itself has a different meaning than the words that make up that phrase. So if I tell you, you know, I'm going to call it a day, that means I'm done for today. Or like I said, a piece of cake, or something happened out of the blue, it wasn't expected. And there are going to be several more. A lot of these you know and you're familiar with, you've used them before. So idioms are a lot of fun, and I do hope you enjoy this week's lessons. If you have any questions, let me know during our Zoom sessions. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, fourth grade. Bye-bye.